Prismatic Evolution is not too far away, and with it is going to be coming a card that's going to probably, completely change the format as it has done in Japan, that being Budew, which for 0 energy does 10 damage and then item locks your opponent, and it also has free retreat. It's basically a new baby Pokemon like Cleffa and Smoochum before it, and this card is seeing a rampant amount of play over in Japan. It's completely warped the format, taking the top tier decks down to mid tier decks and taking like the B tier decks up to top tier decks. Basically, if you're playing a deck that relies on an abundance of item cards, like an evolution deck, or something like Regidrago that requires energy switch, something like Lugia which requires Ultra Ball and Capture an Aroma and all that kind of stuff, then you're going to have a bad time, whereas the decks that don't really rely on the item cards all too much, like Gardevoir and Dragapult, are going to thrive in the upcoming format. And they also play mid-stage evolution, so not being able to use Rare Candy means absolutely nothing. However, it seems the Pokemon Company is not done with item locks, because Journey Together is going to be giving us a new one, that being Tyranitar. This is a 190 HP Darkness Stage 2 with the Daunting Gaze ability that says while this Pokemon's in the active spot, your opponent can't play any item cards from their hand. This ability is pretty much identical to Trevenant's Forest Curse ability back from the X and Y era, which said the exact same thing, and that card was also a very strong card for the time. Item locks are just really annoying to deal with, especially because item cards take up like almost a third of your entire deck, and they just allow you to do so many different things that are integral to winning the game, so just not being able to use them is very frustrating. Tyranitar also has a pretty decent attack, which for a Darkness and a Colorless does 150 damage, and then your opponent discards the top 2 cards of their deck. So not only does Tyranitar item lock your opponent while in the active, but if you attack with it, it's also milling out your opponent. And if your opponent is playing a deck that likes to, churn through itself very quickly, something like Regidrago, something like Gardevoir, then you're just going to be winning the game that much quicker. In some cases with something like Regidrago, you may help them in getting like a Dragon Pokemon into the discard, or something into the discard that they can then use the V-Star power with to get back. But your opponent is also item locked, so whatever they get back is not really going to do a whole much unless it's a supporter card, because the main thing you may notice with this card is that it says while it's in the active spot, your opponent is item locked. So you could use Boss's orders to, bring up a different Pokemon and get around that item lock. Whereas Budew does an attack, and then it item locks your opponent as a secondary ability of that attack. So if they move Budew out of the active, they are still item locked. Another thing to know about this card is that it's a stage 2, so itself loses to item locks unless you play the mid-stage Pupitar, which I imagine evolution decks will be doing because of Budew. Charizard already plays Charmeleon, Dragapult already plays Draclo, Gardevoir already plays Curlier, because those 2 cards are actually pretty good. One thought that did come to my head about a possible partner for this card was Flygon EX from Surging Sparks. Its attack Reversing Storm does 130 damage for 1 fighting energy, and then you switch this Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. So you could have Flygon in the active, attack, and then switch into Tyranitar to then item lock your opponent during their turn. However, the more I think about this, the more I realise that this combo just isn't very good, because Tyranitar's retreat cost is 3, meaning that you're going to have to expend a switch, or 3 energy cards to then move Tyranitar out and bring in Flygon. Plus, Flygon's second attack doesn't require any dark energy, so you're going to be using 2 different types of energies, whereas if you just build a deck around Tyranitar, you only need to play darkness energy. This card's ability is good, but I honestly think that there are just better options, well, the better option being Budew, because not only does it have free retreat, item lock is on an attack that will linger during your opponent's turn, whereas Tyranitar's on an ability that has a specific condition that it needs to meet, and if it's removed from the active spot, your opponent can just now use item cards, whereas with Budew, you attack, they're item locked, and if they get rid of Budew out of the active or anything like that, they are still item locked. So while the card does seem very strong, it's very debatable if it would see play. I think playing Tyranitar purely could see play, but it's also a case of, again, it loses to basically itself and better versions of itself, because it is an evolution Pokemon, so unless you don't want to play the mid-stage or, wait a couple of turns to actually evolve into it, by that time you've probably already lost the game as your opponent is already way ahead of you, then you have to play Rare Candy. And if you get item locked, then you're pretty much screwed. The ability to item lock and mill at the same time is very strong, plus it's a darkness type, and while we do lose some pretty good dark support, that being Dark Patch next rotation, it's still only 2 energy, so something like Crispin could very easily power this up. You could add a darkness and then just a random other energy and attach it. You could play it alongside maybe some other like Pokemon. I'm not exactly sure what. Again, like Flygon was the only example I could come up with, but that means that you need to, you know, switch between Tyranitar and Flygon. But then again, you know, you could be up against a matchup that's weak to darkness, so you prioritize Tyranitar. You could be up against a matchup that's weak to fighting, so then you prioritize Flygon. It's just all theory at this point. The set doesn't release for another week over in Japan, so once that set is released, then we can start seeing if this card will see play. Personally, I'm not entirely certain. It does seem pretty decent if you keep it contained within itself and not play it with other things, because then it kind of just clashes with all that kind of stuff. But if you just play Tyranitar by itself with like a couple of support Pokemon, maybe some like control-oriented supporters and item cards, such as, you know, Crushing Hammer, Enhanced Hammer, you know, Airy, the guy with the glasses and the red hair, I can't remember his name, Zeronix I think his name is, that guy. Like if you play it to be a sort of like control lockdown deck, I think that could be good, but playing it alongside other Pokemon I don't think would be very efficient. There's also the fact that the deck itself loses to the very thing that it itself tries to do. But yeah, just a little quick video about this new Tyranitar card coming out in Journey Together, which we won't be receiving until March. But again, Japan will be getting this set next week, so we can see if this card will see play, as well as, you know, what other cards in that set will see play, because I do have a couple of videos planned for some cards that have been revealed and some possible new decks that may be popping up. I will also be making a video about the new trainer cards. I'm just waiting for them all to be revealed and all that kind of stuff, because I don't like making a video about half the set and then more of the set comes out and then I have to release another video. I'd rather wait for the entire set and then release a video about, you know, the whole set altogether instead of 5 different videos like some other people do. But yeah, I'd like to thank you all for watching this video. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about Tyranitar. Do you think this card is good? Do you think it'll see play? Do you think that won't see play because of other item lock cards we have in the format? You know, the deck loses to the thing itself is trying to do. Do you think it could be good as in like a vacuum where you just play Tyranitar? Kind of similar to how Iron Hands, like pure Iron Hands was played. You play Tyranitar and then just a bunch of disruptive supporters and item cards. I think personally that could work, but it's all up in the air at the moment. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, all of that nonsense, and I shall see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Take care.